lovers, to the Love Dr. Pamela Smith Show. And I'm your host, Dr. Pamela Smith, and we're here on World Star Hit Radio. Now, if you're joining me, you are joining the singles, the daters, those in relationship, the married. You have come to the right place. Because what we're doing is focusing on getting you solutions and strategy to finding and having and getting and keeping any type of relationship. Because what we deal with is that most of the women and our men make an assumption that the other know about what love is and how to have a successful relationship. So today's show, we're going to be talking about traditional and new age relationships. And then we're going to talk about how the roles have changed. And we're going to talk about what caused that change and how do we go about strengthening our relationships. So this is a great show for you. You're going to like this. This is an awesome show because I have an awesome, beautiful lady with me today. Her name is Taffi Dollar. Taffi Dollar is a woman that has been out in the surviving in the women ministry for over 25 years. She's the founder of a Prestige organization and the pastor. She's also an author, wife, a mother of 5. She is the conference host of women's empowerment events. So I'm so proud to have her here with me and welcome her in as we talk about how roles have changed. And we're going to talk about the book that she has written called Gender Roles. And we're going to talk so much about that. We're going to first get into traditional talk. Then we're going to go into the new age talk. We're going to help you understand what caused it. And then we're going to go into how we can fix it and strengthen it. But what I want to do, I want to bring in Taffi Dollar so we can talk and go back and forth, because first I want to really talk with you along with me so we can talk about the tradition first, because I don't want to do it by myself. Because we grew up together. We're about around the same age, and we pretty much know about what's going on then and now. So I wanted to first I want to talk about some of the traditional types, and then you chime in on what you think about what I'm saying and what you think is actually going on as well. Then, because I could be missing something.
Okay.
So what I say that the traditional relationships are about are based on the perception of our parents, and so we in essence, we're doing what our parents were doing and what we see they were doing at that time. So how we choose to be and choose to have relationship is based on what we see through our parents, be male, female, or parents in the household. We base it on how we should get married, when we should get married, it's younger or older, but we do what our parents say is the best mate for us. And so we end up being in relationships that they agree on. And what happens, in order for us to go into those relationships, the man have to ask for a hand in marriage. That's what I found to be very traditional at that time, that the men had to go and ask the parents, can I marry your daughter? And that was important, because that made that give the men a role to take on, to say, I'm going to carry next level of loving her the way she should be loved and taken care of. Now that was, in my mindset, traditional. Back then we didn't have as many same-sex marriages, so they weren't really approved in the traditional time because it wasn't a law at the time.
Absolutely.
So those didn't take place. If they conceived children at that time, they were supposed to get married. That was the way it was supposed to be. You were going to raise this family. You had to do it together. And that was one of the things that's happening, we're going to talk about going forward in New Age, is a major difference that is happening today. And then religion reasons. Back then, you had to marry based on your religion, or they put your mates together based on your religion. So you ended up being in relationships because they say so. So that was the tradition that we had to accept at that time. Now, and then what it meant to be a man and a woman. What is it that we had to do as a woman, and what was our place?
Sure.
And what we had to do. So what do you from those few things? I just gave a few because we could go on and on.
You gave quite a lot.
Yeah, you might have some.
And thank you for having me too.
Thank you for being here.
I'm honored to be here as your guest. And we do go way back.
Yes.
Southwest Atlanta is in the building.
Oh,
For
yes.
all those who know what that means, SWAT, right? Northside
right.
Tigers.
Yes,
But anyway,
yes.
yeah, I mean, it's like the very first point that you mentioned, that we marry based on our parents, right? Was
Yes.
one of the first things
Yes.
that you mentioned.
Yes.
And I think our parents even married based on their parents,
Yes.
which are our grandparents, right? So I think it's that continuing on that we've seen from generation to generation that has been really being modeled,
Yes.
And so even our children will base marriage and relationships on how they see us
Yes.
navigate through relationships and through life,
Yes.
So it's constantly, even though we don't know it, it's being passed down.
Oh, yes. I agree.
And some of it is historical, depending on your environment or what your parents' beliefs
yes.
were. Many of those things you began to take on the same way in which you communicate, the way you deal with things, in your home, how you solve problems, who does what, whose responsibilities are to do maybe domestic things, clean, to cook. And so it's based really on first century. And we're in the 21st century.
Yes, that is so true.
And many instances is based on one income, where the husband would go out, kill the meat, bring it back home. The wife, in many instances, would stay home with the children, and she would cook it and serve it to the family. But now, both the man and the wife, in many instances, are working because of the need for two incomes.
Because it has changed. The cost of living has changed totally, and that's why I talk about this topic is so important for us to talk about, because on my last show I was talking to my listeners about why they're not ready. And it has a lot to do with what you're talking about, going from what our parents taught us and what we did at that time, and what was believed to be a reason to be in a relationship. And what I found is that there's many reasons that most people are just not ready.
They're not ready,
and they don't really pay attention to the past and to the traditions.
That's true. And my mother used to say that a lot about children. She was a high school counselor, and a lot of times she would say, "You got to be ready to have children."
Yes.
And I didn't know what she was talking about. But looking back, I knew exactly what she meant. I didn't know how to change a diaper when I had my first daughter. Just so many things that I wasn't ready for.
Yes.
And so here I am in the delivery room, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law telling me how to take care of this new person.
Yeah.
So
you have no idea.
You have to be ready. You really do.
You really do.
And you have to have these kind of conversations with your children, with your spouse, your partner to be, significant other, whatever it is.
Yes.
So you can at least get on the same page. But, as we find, a lot of times people are just flying by the seat of their pants into relationships, and they wonder why it doesn't work, because we haven't prepared ourselves and talked about it. What do you want to do? What was your image of what a woman should be? Is that being the maid, or was she someone who had someone to delegate to get things done? Or what did your mom do? What did your dad do? Was he home involved, or was he primarily a provider? And so these are things that you have to talk about and not assume.
And we're not talking about it. And that's why the connection with our relationships have separated. And they're not staying in part with the tradition. And that's what we're going to talk about, is the new age. But the tradition part is so important, because in order for us to understand our roles in our relationship, we've got to know what the traditions were, and to stay in line with that. Because if you can stay in line with let's say this for let's talk about this for a minute. If you're in a relationship with each other and you're dating, and men in the tradition would open the door.
Right.
Okay, why didn't I open the door now? Well, my door's still open.
Well, you have some women who
Don't care.
Who don't care.
And that
want to open their own door.
Yes.
I don't need a man to open my door.
No, I want to open my door.
Everybody's prerogative, right? So men are trying to figure out what is it to be a man?
Correct.
What is it to be a woman? Does
Yes.
that mean I'm not a woman because I don't want a man to open my door?
Right.
And I want to open my own door, or that I want to have my own bank account and pay whatever I want to pay and not have a joint situation? Does that mean I'm not supportive? It's just a lot to really discuss, like you're saying. And tradition's not all bad. I think sometimes when we talk about tradition, we think that it's all to be thrown out of the window. But I mean, there were some good things in terms of the commitment to the family, the communication.
Yes.
That in many instances you kind of had on purpose. But some of the technology we can utilize and blessed by technology, but it does distort the degree of communication to a certain degree,
right.
with our children and just with
right.
one another.
I agree, and that was why us talking about the separation of the tradition and how things have changed and how we are now trying to find ourselves and have better relationships.
Yes.
But if we could give them more about the tradition, and if we could talk, at least remember those traditions, you could go forward understanding why our roles have changed. And that's what I like so much about your book, Gender Roles, because it's talking a lot about our roles changing and why so much of the difference. And so in order for me to get you listeners, listen to me, to get this, you've got to understand a step of what we're taking you through. First, we got to get you on track with the tradition. So you have to understand, what were our traditions? What do we do? How do we have successful relationships? How do we enjoy each other? How will we understand how to mature? You have to actually know what was of pleasure as an adult growing, a young person growing to an adult, to be mature, to be a parent, to raise children, to be a wife, to be a friend. And if you don't really think about the traditions that our parents were raised to be, then it's difficult for you to even go forward in accepting the new roles that are happening now.
That's right. I mean, I love the fact that my mother was out of the house, that she pursued her career for 30 years here in the Atlanta Public School System. Very successful career, working from a kindergarten teacher up to becoming an assistant principal. And to me, I was just determined, okay, I want to have a career too.
Right.
I want to be a counselor when I become an adult. All those things that really motivated me to want to have a life outside of my home and outside of the traditional family.
Right.
And I think that's okay.
Right.
And that is the model. Whatever we want our children to experience, we have to model it for them.
Yes.
And so it's a lot.
Yeah, so we have a lot to talk about, because that's so important. I mean, I want to make sure that we stay on the tradition, but we do have to go forward and talk about what's happening today.
That's right.
Because it's so major now in as far as new age time, and I call it new age relationships.
Okay, good.
I couldn't figure out another word.
Hey, that works. I know where you're going. It's 2018, new age.
So we have new age relationships that are happening. We're going to talk about that when we come back, because I want to go into that more, because I want to get more into the book of Gender Roles that you've written. Taffi Dollar has written many and multiple books. Please make sure you go to taffidollar.org and buy all the other books that are available to read. But today is so important that you need now. You make sure you purchase Gender Roles. They can buy it at all locations, even at on your site, taffidollar.org.
Amazon.com.
And Amazon. Just make sure you pick up the book, because it's an outstanding book that you must read and understand why through even, it's more still talking about the spiritual side and
Sure.
God's side of
Absolutely.
having roles in your relationship. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the new age relationships. We're going to talk about those type of relationships and what's going on with those roles. We'll be back in just a few minutes. I'm Dr. Pamela Smith here with Taffi Dollar. We'll be right back. Welcome back, lovers. This is Love Dr. Pamela Smith, and I am here with Taffi Dollar, and you are watching the Love Dr. Pamela Smith show. Now, when we left, we were talking about traditional relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to talk about new age relationships.
Okay.
Now I'm going to throw out a few new age relationships that I think are going on, and if you agree or disagree, let me know, because it took me a minute. It's so much.
Okay.
So it was a lot of things that's really going on today that I could go on and on. But I'm gonna just talk about a few. So there's more single people today.
It is.
And they're single longer.
Right.
Because of their careers and opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they're staying single longer. They're choosing to not go straight into relationships. They're choosing to focus on self. And actually, I say this is more of a new age of me. It's about me.
Sure.
And so that is what one of the relationships that I found to be one of the major reasons that it's hard for them to pay attention to the traditions that are going on, because they're choosing to just be single.
Sure.
They don't find that they need to be married or seek marriage. They're seeking their opportunities and their career and self. I think that's the best way to say it. They don't seek advice as much. Because in tradition time, we were seeking a lot of advice of how to raise our children, how to be an adult,
Sure.
maturing. We really seeked a lot of advice. I feel today they getting so much advice you can't tell them anything. They feel, you got the Googles and all that going on, and they listen more to Google than you. Like, like you've never been here before. Like, oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Google, no.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have that going on, and that separates that relationship conversation, with each other. They're in multiple relationships. They're not valuing relationships. They're having multiple relationships, or they're dating multiple people versus let me focus on one and let me just figure it out and see if this is a relationship. They're not valuing themselves more because they want to just be free. They just want to be free. There's a high rate of divorce, so they don't take the time to figure it out. If it doesn't work, I'm out. If it doesn't make sense, I'm out. And they just end the relationship. They just let me just move on. Then it's more one parents in relation that are raising children and having children, and they're showing more of it on television because you have more of the actors and actresses having children without the other parent. They just want to have children because they waited so long. They waited till it was too late. Um, there is a high rate of women that are in the workforce, which in essence, uh, when we talk about your book, is called The Roles to Switch and pretty much change because women have now more opportunities to find jobs, be CEOs, create and do more than our men. And so the roles have changed to where I feel that men are doing more than the woman, and things have changed. Then you have same-sex marriages now are approved. So now we're dealing with more of the situation. So in your book, Gender Roles, and we're talking about your book. What do you find as I was looking into your book that women are leading, and you have in one of your chapters that yes, we can lead, women can lead, and because of today and new age relationships. In your book, Gender Roles, what are you saying in that? Because as
Sure.
I mentioned about the new times.
Well, I think in the last segment we were talking about how um, the traditional way was that men could dominate. And so
Yeah.
the book talks about how when there was one income and a sole provider, in many instances, men had the ability to be able to make all the decisions concerning the family, um, the direction of the family. They were the provider of the family. But now, because we are under a different dispensation or under grace, or we can begin to understand more about the relationships between men and women are changing. And so now you don't see where women are dominated as they were in traditional ways of living. And in essence, when we talk
Mm-hmm.
about traditional,
Mm-hmm.
Western minded thinking is very different from people who live in the East. We're more contemporary, where women are outside of the home and they can pick their spouses, whether they want to date. Like you said, they want to marry later, when they want to marry, if they want to marry.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the East and other places, they didn't have that luxury. And so, a lot of things are discussed in the book where we're talking about how the roles of men and women have changed. And so no longer are we're to dominate each other, but God has created men and women to coexist
Mm-hmm.
and to be in the position where they can be interdependent upon each other, that they can work together and they can talk about things together, the decisions concerning the family,
Right.
talk about if they want to date each other or if they want to just only, you know, be committed to this relationship going into marriage, or if they just want to be single and
Right.
develop spiritually, intellectually, develop
Mm-hmm.
professionally,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that they want to do, that's their prerogative. So I think it's important for us to understand that now we're living in the age where I call biblical equality, because it's a place where God wants us both to be able to excel and to not have to go through maybe, under the old way in doing things, men had the responsibility to pray for the family, to pray and have the relationship with God, and everything rested on men.
Right. That's true.
And on the male, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he was the
Mm-hmm.
be all, end all, and it was a lot of pressure.
Yes. Yes.
And
Men.
to provide and to be able to, put food on the table, feed all the mouths, shelter, clothing, so forth and so on. But
Mm-hmm.
now, as we've progressed, we see now where women are taking on responsibilities like never before, to be single household heads of homes
Mm-hmm.
and raising families. I mean, many of them are winning at it. They really are. I
Yes,
applaud
that's true.
the single moms who are out there every day making it happen for their families
Mm-hmm.
and doing what needs to be done.
Right.
And so, it's difficult and it's challenging, but many have to do what they have to do in order to do what needs to be done for their family. So I think, it's important for us to identify what is important for us as individuals, because I don't think we should make decisions based on our gender. Just because I'm a
Yeah.
woman doesn't mean I can cook a 5-course meal.
True.
And have it ready.
Can't cook.
Yeah.
No, let me stop.
My mother was a great cook, but I mean, I can cook. You can cook.
Yeah, but nobody knows about the new age.
So it's like we don't have to put all this pressure on ourselves to, try to be Betty Crocker.
Yeah. Okay.
We're not Betty Crocker, right?
Yes.
Because some women are. They want to be Betty Crocker.
Yes, that's true.
Bake the bread and butter it and home, and that's their thing. And I think that's beautiful.
Yes.
I'm not shaming anybody if that's what your purpose is in life. And some women just want to grow up and be wives and mothers.
Yes,
and that's
cool.
True.
That is true.
Maybe that was what they believe they're supposed to do, or their purpose, or maybe what was modeled to them. But
let's talk about that, because in New Age, when we're talking about which we didn't touch on, which was the spiritual side. In a traditional time, we were more involved in the church. We were more involved in our spiritual beliefs, our roles as what we do together. We had a strong value of that. And today, we don't have as many that are involved in the church as they should. They don't feel they need to. And what I've gotten from some people, they say it's because it's too many choices.
Too many choices.
Too many choices.
Internet.
And too many choices.
Because you can stream. You don't have to really go anywhere.
You don't really have to go anywhere.
Internet makes it available. It's just a click.
And that's a major change too, because now the traditional time, we went to church, we prayed together, we gathered together, we were there in the space together.
We dressed up. I remember
we dressed up,
the
hat,
ruffled socks, black patent leather shoes, the bows. I mean, the suits, the ties, the dresses.
We did all
that. Yeah.
Now it's like, no, I can look at it on. Okay, what a phone. Okay, there. Oh, there go Pastor. Nobody's going in there anymore. So. It's a total difference. And so now what we have to do is we have to really understand the difference in what's going on in our tradition and in the New Age tradition.
Right.
So but what we're going to do, we're going to come back and we're going to go more into it, because we need to really actually talk about what the cause and what's causing this and what's going on more in this gender roles and how they have changed. So I am Love Dr. Pamela Smith. We're going to come back and we're going to talk more with Taffi Dollar. You're going to stay to the whole show with me, right?
I am here as long as you like for me to be.
Yay! So we're going to come back. We're going to talk some more about her book, Gender Roles, with Taffi Dollar.
The hottest music, R&B, hip hop, pop, reggae, EDM, indie, old school. Check it. And sports talk right here. WorldStarHitRadio.com. The hottest music, R&B, hip hop, pop, reggae, EDM, indie, old school.
Black lovers. We're here at the Love Dr. Pamela Smith show, and my special guest Taffi Dollar. So we've been talking. We've been talking about our book, Gender Roles, and we're talking about the the traditional relationships. We're talking about the new age relationships, and we're talking about what the causes are now. What's going on in the roles. So what sparked you to write the book?
Interestingly enough, I had gone to South Africa back in 2014 to speak at a women's event at a friend of ours' church called Rhema Bible Church, Ray and Zelda McCauley. So I was one of the speakers there. And after I had spoken and done a couple of sessions, I was on a panel. And so the panel was talking about sexism, racism, classism, and they even started talking about equality for women of South Africa, and particularly what was going on when women were making a lot less money than men. And so at lunch, we started talking about what they introduced as biblical equality, and started talking about just this whole issue where men would dominate women. I'm not sure if our viewers are aware, but marital rape that happens in South Africa every 30 minutes.
Wow.
Just a lot of the different cultural type things.
Right.
And so that whole conversation sparked me to really do my own deep dive and study of equality in my own relationships.
Okay.
And particularly, I started thinking about my children, my nieces and nephews who are waiting longer to get married, who not sure if they want to get married, uncertain if marriage is really something that they want to do right now. So I was just really propelled to look at this area because I realized that it stemmed a lot from how they saw themselves and how they saw maybe their parents in relationships and just traditional things. And so from that, I came back home. I told my husband, I said, I'm not the same. I'm different. I feel like I've really gotten an epiphany on relationships, and I think I can really help people to really understand how to have more positive, lasting relationships. Because studies show that the best marriages are those that are based in equality.
Okay.
And not in domination.
Okay.
And domination of a man over a woman, or dominating a woman dominating a man, both are wrong.
Right.
And so it's important for people to understand that, you don't want to be in a relationship where you feel as if you're lorded over and all of that, So I really just started to look at the traditional way in which relationships were, and how now it's really opened the door for a lot of frustration.
So what we have to do is that we have to get them to not go against the belief of past tradition, but to come forward with how we come together and have successful relationship. And that's pretty much what my show is about. It's about us having successful relationship, how we have successful relationship. What do you do to seek a person that can fulfill your dreams, your desires, your likes, your dislikes, and most people out there are having a hard time,
right?
Because they're not, as you say, looking at or paying attention to the roles of what they can as an individual create and have a great relationship. So so when you did this book, what because we're looking at the bright color, beautiful book. So how did you come up with that?
Because it has the gender symbols on it, right?
Yes.
And typically, when you think of men or boys and girls, you think of the pink and the blue. And initially, I thought about gray and yellow, which is now becoming more popular with babies, and more neutral colors when it comes to boys and girls versus the pink and the blue. So, just really a play on the colors that in many instances signify guys, girls, men, and women, and just and
understanding how to have better relationships, because it's an outstanding book. Because if you are mainly talking about the success of a relationship, this book is awesome for anybody to read and go into, because when we're talking about what causes it has a lot to do, like you said, with the society, what you know, what you and our choices,
Right.
and then we're not asking why this a relationship may fail. We're just looking at relationships as though it just happens.
Right. And I think for us, I know after I came home and I started talking to my husband about our roles
Okay.
in the marriage, him being the husband, me being the wife, being the fact that, you know, as we talked about earlier, not excited about doing domestic things.
Yes.
But now that we're empty nesters, okay, how can we make sure that everything's get done in the home, but at the same time that I don't feel as if all the pressure's on me.
On you.
Yeah.
Which is very important, because men make the assumption that you always know what to do. And we're growing together, and men don't think about that. We're growing together to learn how to love each other.
Sure.
And how to have a great relationship. It's not just on the woman. And now when you get in a certain age, I mean, sure, we're ready to retire and put our foot up, but we still got work to do.
Yeah.
And especially around the home. And you don't have your children anymore to do that and to make sure that goes on. That's what we talk about, the values, traditional values, and now our values now. And actually, it comes with all the new things that are out there that are taking place, like you were saying, what you all are doing at home now. And how, but in a conversation we were talking about before, we talked about how why the roles have changed. You know, what really caused the roles to switch?
I think there's a confusion where people don't really know, and to say because you're the man, you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z, says that formula is supposed to work for every man and every woman. Because I'm a woman, I'm supposed to maybe stay home, take care of the kids, and not work. Well, that doesn't apply to me, and nor does it, you know, the traditional roles for my husband apply to him. So he travels a lot, and he's very good at domestic things.
Oh, got you. I see.
He cleans very well.
Wow.
Way more better than I do.
Okay.
And so for us, it wasn't about, you know, me doing the domestic things because I'm the woman. It was who does it better.
Okay.
And so for us, it was like, okay, well, you do a great job, much better job in making up the bed than me, so you make it up.
Okay,
you
so
know,
let's talk
we
about
talk
that.
about
Let's
these
talk
kinds
about
of
that.
things.
How long have you all been married?
32 years.
32 years. That's a long time.
It is a very long time.
And so, do you think, in those years, did the roles change from the beginning of the marriage to later?
Yes, because of conversation, though. And I think because we've gotten older and now the children are gone, the roles change because we're doing more for each other, whereas things that we used to have to do when the children were smaller, we don't have to do it anymore. So certainly, roles change as you age, as you know each other more, you see each other's strengths on a day-to-day basis. And so certainly, those things allude to us having, it's supposed to be getting better, you know, as opposed to getting apart. So yeah, the roles do change. And I think you have to just really know the person and have those conversations and really talk about who wants to do what. So it's not just, you know, force and pressure and you feel stressed out because you're trying to measure up to this person's expectation, but it's like really knowing yourself too.
Right.
And knowing what you're good at.
Right.
I can decorate. I don't, you know, Gruffalo, he would buy oversized furniture and it's like, well, let me just pick out the size because I'll measure and make sure. So it's like now, whereas before certain things that he would do because he felt like he had to do everything, he doesn't have to do anymore because he has a partner, somebody that he can talk to.
When you mentioned that, and we had talked about that before. So what about the children? So when the children were being raised, who had more of the role then versus now?
Well, you know, interestingly enough, when the children were smaller, these things started coming out because I recognized that there were things that they wanted to do, and he felt like all the decisions were on him.
Okay.
You know, what the kids.
And that's what most men think.
Yeah, he felt like, you know, if they could go to a party, if they couldn't, who could spend the night over, whose house they could go to and spend the night. So it was all these decisions that in many instances, because of the traditional roles that we didn't chime in together, he felt like I'm the one to have the responsibility to decide. And in most instances, things that I felt like were not in the best interest because I knew the kids wouldn't like it. But, you know, based on tradition, that was
the way it was. And so now, and what's going on now in our relationships with each other and what we're doing in our business life and our career life, it's switching now. So we're beginning to be more involved differently.
Yes.
And that's one of the things I think that has really truly happened.
It is
that we're doing things differently. And in your book, you know, you talk about that. How, you know, of course, two heads are better than one. We agree that.
Right.
So, but we're not having two heads that right now. Just today, in this new age, we're single. There's a lot of single men and women who choosing to just enjoy relationships.
And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you decide you want to be single, it's not where everybody has to be married. It's supposed to be married. I think, you know, the Bible talks about how there were those who chose to stay single because they could devote themselves to their lives and to God and their families, extended families. So, you know, living very purposeful lives. But I think as society, we have put so much emphasis on marriage.
Yeah.
And we have just, you know, got to get married by this time. If you don't, something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
And that's not right.
And that's what's happening. So we're settling. And when we come back, we'll be back in just a few minutes. We're going to talk more because we're going to get into now. And we're going to give some ideas. We're going to do some things about how we can, you know, get it going and get them to see the difference in the roles and what we think of ourselves and what we need to do. So I'm Love Dr. Pamela Smith here with Taffi Dollar. We'll be right back. Lovers to the Love Dr. Pamela Smith show. Again, we're here with Taffi Dollar, and we're talking about the book she authored called Gender Roles. And we've been talking throughout the show about how roles have changed for our men, how roles have changed for our women, and what we're doing to make it better. How can we fix it? And so what we're going to do now, we're going to really truly talk about what is it that we could do as men and women to help create and strengthen better relationships and have successful relationships. And what we're talking about is removing, is what I feel, is removing a lot of fear. Because we have fear that causes our relationships to be, I guess, disproportionate because we're not agreeing, we're not coming together, we're not believing. uh, and being patient. We're not patient to wait for a mate because I feel our mate has been chosen for us, and if we're just patient, we'll seek that. And that's a question that you get from a lot of people. Do you meet? Can you meet your soulmate? Have you met your soulmate? How do you know when you've met your soulmate? And so, because of that, people have a fear that they're going to meet someone. They become impatient, and they don't want to get understanding. And so, in your book, you talked about eliminating weaknesses, and what do we do to solve that? What could we do to solve eliminating being weak and being impatient and fearing that we won't meet a mate, and understanding the roles that we have so that we can have stronger relationships?
Sure. Well, I think when you establish a relationship, you want to eliminate, well, in any relationship, you're coming together so you can, through that relationship, have something stronger than you would have by yourself, right? So that's the part of the purpose for marriage is, okay, I can, with this individual, be more fulfilling. I feel as if this person will help me fulfill my purpose. I can help them fulfill their purpose. And so us together are really building on each other's strengths.
Compromising.
Right.
Yeah.
You're compromising in
Yeah.
situations. You don't focus on each other's weaknesses, but it's through my strengths that I can bring to the relationship, and then my partner, through his strengths, he can bring to the relationship. Like I was mentioning earlier, Creflo's strengths to be able to, clean and do laundry and stuff like that eliminates the weaknesses that I had and not in that area. And as a result, the house is clean, the
right.
bed is made up, it looks presentable.
Yeah.
And so if it were left up to me, that was a weakness of mine.
Okay.
And so you eliminate it by you coming together and you focusing on what each person can bring to the equation. And I think so many times we use weaknesses to tear each other down and to shine the light on it, and it can be very destructive for relationships. And you're right, fears have everything. A lot of times we go into relationships, I didn't even know the fears that I had until I got married.
Yeah.
You are in a position now where through your spouse, you're able to hear certain things that maybe you're needing to work on, or whatever the case may be, or maybe what you saw your parents go through and you said, hey, I'm never going to do or experience that.
Yes.
And so, that type of thing will immediately cause you to put up a defense. So I've had a defense going into marriage. My husband will never talk to me. He'll never do what my dad did to my mom. All those kinds of things. And so a lot of times we bring that in, not even knowing it.
Right.
We don't even realize it.
We do.
Having that deflex or that reflex, certain things that are triggers in relationships. So we really have to recognize and talk about, what is the vision? What is the purpose of this relationship? Why are we coming together? What are we trying to accomplish? What's your vision for your life? What do you want to do? How can I help you accomplish what you believe God has put you on the earth to do? And do you even know what you're here for?
Right.
And I think those conversations are so important, because you don't want to be with somebody who really doesn't know where they're going.
But they're not having the conversation.
Blind is leading the blind.
Yeah.
And we both, as the Bible says, going to end up in a ditch.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we don't know where we're going.
We're going.
And so I think it's important. If you don't know, then wait. Don't just have relationships, start and date with somebody, misleading, defrauding, cheating somebody when you're really not serious about them. Or if you're just in it just to talk about having a good time. We're just going to hang out and, just be friends. That's fine too. But I think all those things have to be understood.
I think the main one that we're missing is just being friends.
Yeah, being friends.
We don't know how to be friends. And so it's so important that if you remove the fear, when you're meeting someone, if you become patient in the person that you're meeting and take the time to get to know them, if you just listen and communicate, you become best friends.
Yes.
and that best friend becomes your mate.
That's right.
But you have to take time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that equate to, do you know if that's your soulmate or not? My answer to that, I don't. I think it happens.
Well, the good thing is you have something to fall back on. If it's
Yes.
your soulmate, if it's not your soulmate, we're gonna be stay friends.
Yes.
And that's my thing. At the end of the day, let's just stay friends. Let's
Yes,
be friends. You know,
It's so
But
important.
It is.
And
It's
we don't
vital.
have that. And we don't have that.
Yeah.
We don't have that at all. Now, how can the listeners keep up with what you're doing and what's going on? Give
Sure.
us more about how they can keep up
Well,
with
I have an
you and-
event coming up in Maryland, Suitland, Maryland, September the 14th at Victory Christian Ministries. It's a Taffi Talks, and I'm really excited. We're going to be talking about biblical equality and really getting into gender roles,
Oh,
mutual
wow.
submission. Cynthia Brayson and I will be talking about it, so I encourage everybody. There's registration information at my website, taffydollar.org, so that's where they can find me, and that's what I got coming up.
Okay, great. So they can find you on all social medias
Mhm.
under Taffi Dollar.
That's right.
Make sure you stay with Taffi Dollar. So much that is always going on.
It's always
You're
something
always
going on.
helping in the community, helping people understand themselves, seeking spirituality, happiness, and there's so many other books that you have written that they can go to, and
Sure.
and they can go to taffydollar.org and
Mhm.
get your book. Yes, so make sure you keep an eye out on Taffi Dollar, because I've so enjoyed you being here with us. The
Thanks
book
for
is
having me.
awesome, Gender Roles, and you must get her book because it's going to help you understand how to truly meet a mate, understanding your spirit and your desires and your love for life and self. Just reading the book, and it's an easy read.
It really is.
Oh wow! You know, I said that. I'm tired of these 200-300 pages. Give me an easy read book. So I can get it done.
Yeah, you can read
So,
that one.
yes,
It's super easy.
It's an awesome book. So until next time, don't just go through the motion of love. Get understanding. Love is always seeking you.
Mhm.
And remember, only true love is delayed. I truly believe that only true love is delayed. You join me again next week, and we're going to share more with friends and have questions and concerns. Make sure you visit my site, lovedrpamelasmith.com. We're on all social media. Make sure you stay tuned with the Love Dr. Pamela Smith show here on World Star Hit Radio. And I want to thank my special guest, Taffi Dollar, for joining me here as we talk about traditional and new age relationships.
Thank you
I
for
think
having
we've
me.
given them a lot of information on how to make it happen.
I hope so.
And if you need more additional information, please make sure you visit taffydollar.org and join the group, join life, join relationships as we go and seek love and happiness. I am Dr. Pamela Smith here with Taffi Dollar, and I'll see you next week.